All right, hello and welcome to Lesson 8. Today we're going to unlock what I think is the single most important rule in all of German if you want to sound natural. It's called the V2 rule, and I promise you, if you can master this one thing, it will completely change how you build your sentences.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Do you want to instantly sound more natural when you speak German? I mean, of course you do, right? That's the goal. Well, the key is actually a lot simpler than you might think.
And the really good news is, to make that huge leap forward, you just have to master one simple foundational rule. And that's exactly what we're going to break down for you right now. Okay, let's dive in. We are starting with what I like to call the golden V2 rule. But before we can really understand the rule itself, we have to get clear on a key building block. What exactly do we mean by a sentence element?
So here's the rule itself. It's actually pretty simple on the surface. In a German statement, the conjugated verb is always the second element. That's why we call it V2 or Verb-Zwei, which literally means verb 2. And this isn't a suggestion, it's like a law of physics in German grammar.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The rule says second element, not second word. And that distinction is absolutely critical. So what on earth do we mean by an element?
And this right here is the key. An element isn't just one word. Think of it as a complete chunk of an idea. This is the concept that trips up so many beginners because we get stuck just counting individual words. You gotta see the chunks.
So let's look at some examples. A single word like ich, which means I. Yep, that's one element. Easy enough. But a phrase like heute Morgen, this morning, guess what? That's also just one element. Same for der große Mann, the tall man, or in der Schule, in the school. You have to see them as these single, inseparable blocks of meaning.
All right, so now that we get what elements are, let's see this whole thing in a context that feels a little more familiar. We'll start with the standard sentence structure, which, you'll be happy to hear, is a lot like English.
Take a look. Ich kaufe einen Apfel. Here, ich is element 1, and our verb, kaufe, is sitting right there in the second spot. See? Perfect. Same thing with der Mann lernt Deutsch. The subject is first, the verb is second. This is the basic pattern, and it feels pretty natural to us as English speakers.
Okay, but here is where the V2 rule really shows its power, and where German starts to feel, well, it starts to feel German. It's time to look at what we call the inverted sentence. This is the classic German twist.
I absolutely love this metaphor because it makes the rules so easy to remember. Just think of it this way. The verb is like a king that will not move from its throne in position 2. It is fixed, it is stubborn, and everything else in the sentence has to move around it.
So, let's take this perfectly normal sentence, Ich gehe heute ins Kino. I'm going to the movies today. We've got our elements numbered here. Subject, verb, time, place. Everything's lined up nicely, just as we'd expect.
So, what if we want to emphasize when we're going? We can start the sentence with heute. Now listen up because this is the single most common mistake for English speakers. Our brain wants to say heute ich gehe, but that is completely wrong. Remember the king, the verb, it cannot move from its throne. It has to stay in second place, which means the only right way to say it is heute gehe ins Kino.
Let's break that down mechanically, step by step. First, the time element heute moves up and grabs position 1. But the verb, our king, gehe, it absolutely stays put in position 2. And because that spot is now taken, the subject ich has nowhere to go but to be pushed over to position 3. You see? The V2 rule forces this to happen.
And this works with any element, not just time. Let's try it with the place. The standard sentence is Wir lernen in der Schule. We learn in the school. But if we want to emphasize where we learn, we can start with in der Schule. That whole chunk is our first element. The verb lernen holds its ground in position 2, which then pushes the subject, wir, over to position 3. In der Schule lernen wir. The rule always wins.
And you know what? This rule is incredibly consistent. It even applies when you're asking questions. You'll see that W questions, the ones starting with what, where, or when, they also have to obey the king.
It works just like you'd expect at this point. The W word, like wo for where or one for when, is the first element. And what's in position 2? You got it, the verb. Wo wohnst du? Wann beginnt der Film? The V2 rule holds strong.
Now, after all this emphasis on the verb always being second, you probably knew there had to be an exception, right? But the good news is it's a very clear and very specific one. So let's look at the one time the verb actually does move.
Okay, here's the big distinction. On the left, you see our normal V2 rule, working perfectly with W questions. But look over on the right. For yes/no questions, the verb does something crazy. It breaks the rule and jumps all the way to position 1. This is the signal that a yes or no answer is needed. Wohnst du in Berlin? Kommst du heute? This is the V1 rule, and it's really the only major exception you need to know about.
So let's just do a super quick recap of everything. In any normal statement, the verb is in position 2, always. If another element starts the sentence, the subject gets kicked to the spot right after the verb. In a W question, the verb is also in position 2, and the only exception to all this? In a yes/no question, the verb jumps to position 1. And that's pretty much the entire system.
So, are you ready to put it into practice? You know, the best way to make this feel automatic is to just take a simple sentence like Ich lerne Deutsch heute and just play with it. Try starting it with heute. What has to happen? Or try starting it with Deutsch. See how the verb just stays put and all the other pieces move around it? Mastering this one V2 rule really is your foundation for building correct, natural-sounding German. Great job today.